I remember mine. Now this is something I'd have to talk to my advisor with, and we've already had a slight discussion about it. But I'm doing a continuation of a project, and so the idea of using the different variables that past grad students have used to format your thesis, um, it seems as though there's like a pressure to do something different than everyone else has done in the past, and I don't know where it, like, especially for writing a proposal, you don't want to make it the exact same that the last person did, and I don't know where the line is for how, especially because I do phosphorus stuff, and it's like a bajillion papers about phosphorus.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
the creating of a proposal and making sure you're not plagiarizing or anything like that to the point where someone gets mad. I don't know where the line is on that.
That's a great question. That's a really, really good question, especially relevant again for the master's level where, you know, you quite frankly generally don't have time as a master's student to come in and invent some, new piece of water chemistry analytical equipment to measure phosphorus in a new way. Like ion chromatographs, stuff like that. Inductively coupled plasmas, the atomic emission spectrometers that you would use to study cations in water solution. Uh, Ion chromatograph is for anions, stuff like that. Like those instruments have been around for a long time. And like you say, there are a bajillion studies that use them because they've been around and they're really useful. Um, so yeah, like you're not probably going to completely blow everybody's mind with something that's completely out of left field and new and just wildly unexpected. Um, it's kind of exciting when that's a possibility, but most of science is actually evolutionary, very careful steps that are smaller instead of these huge leaps to connect to some new technique or um, sort of watershed, no pun intended, change in sort of the theory guiding your work, stuff like that. Um, so don't feel like you have to do that. You don't have to come up with something wild and new. That's a great way to just get frustrated and kind of overwhelmed and just throw up your hands and go, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Um, what is very common and successful for master's students is to marshal enough of a literature review and have enough conversations with your advisor and with the instructors of like the key content classes around what your research is looking at to understand why you are using an established technique and why it's functional and efficient not to have to invent a new one, because you are asking a question, maybe a research question that has been looked at in an adjacent way to what you are planning on doing. So the novelty in your research is the elaboration on technique. Maybe you tweak a field protocol or you um, have some new kind of sampling regime that provides an order of magnitude more detailed data in time or more detailed data spatially, like there's more density of sampling points on the map. Um, or it could be, people have done this particular phosphorus kind of tracking study, maybe fates of phosphorus runoff. Well, all over the world even, but nobody's ever done it in Southern Illinois. So we probably have some idea of what it would look like, but just nobody ever actually got to do the thing in Southern Illinois. And so you're not using a new technique, you're not inventing something, but you are filling in a hole on the map, so to speak, of what phosphorus fates for that example might be in, 4 counties in Southern Illinois with this particular profile of um, farms using this particular kind of crop rotations that you just don't quite see anywhere else on this soil type here in Southern Illinois. So this is not replicating an experiment. That's a very specific term of you are trying to do exactly what somebody else did. So you can compare apples to apples and validate or try to break their conclusions. So falsify the hypothesis is the technical statistical way of saying that. Um, and sort of advance science in that way. What you are doing is elaborating on the previous technique in a new place. Another way to think about this is, okay, so maybe somebody has done this work. You mentioned this is a project extension. Maybe somebody has done this, but they haven't done it in 2021. They couldn't have. It was in the future back then. So you are filling in a gap, maybe not on the map, but on the timeline of human understanding. Okay. So one currently highly relevant example of this is you may or may not in the recent research literature have seen the concept of the anthropause. So uh, historians of science, climatologists and so forth, paleobotanists and so forth, paleozoologists, they've identified our current sort of geologic time period as the Anthropocene, where the human species is completely dominating natural processes, right? So we're, disrupting water cycles and climate and heating up the oceans, and it's all very exciting until we all die. But part of the Anthropocene era are things like um, we are creating the most aggressive mass extinction event in all of biological history on the face of the planet. That's unfolding around us right now. So when COVID-19 hit, very end of 2019, all of 2020, and now into 2021 with these mutated strains from the UK, South Africa. There's a particularly nasty one, steamrolling people in Brazil, like today. That set of quarantines all around the world, it emptied shipping lanes. Geologists were saying, seismologists were saying, we are seeing a lack of background noise that we have never seen before because nobody's on the roads, and there's less seismic disturbance, seismic white noise from so many transfer trucks going across roads near our very sensitive seismometers. Ecoacousticians, marine ecoacousticians have said, with the huge stall in international shipping, particularly across the Pacific, whales are changing their migration patterns, their communication patterns across long distances, and so forth, because there's less noise pollution from those huge, pollution belching container ships that, gosh, the largest ones of them represent literally the equivalent of millions of car engines exhausting into the atmosphere in terms of carbon and particulate pollution. So you pile up a bunch of those cargo container ships, like thousands of them, at the port to the tunnel or the channel at Calais in France, stopping stuff from getting into the UK. You pile up thousands and thousands of ships around the major international ports in LA, Seattle, places like that. And they're not making a bunch of noise out in the ocean. And it's completely changing how animals in particular are responding. So that's the anthropause, people sort of pausing shipping, travel, social gatherings, having profound effects on the natural world. That research was not possible 18 months ago. Like, we didn't know this was, we knew the next pandemic was coming. We just didn't know when or how bad. And it's pretty bad. But it affords a new research opportunity in 2021 and then the latter half of 2020 using old techniques, right? We're using the same arrays of hydrophones in the ocean to hear changes in whale song. We're using the same air quality sampling stations and the same seismometer networks to sample the changes in air pollution that you could see like down streets in places like Beijing and certain cities in India, where on a typical day, the visibility limit was like 100 yards instead of 100 miles because of particulate air pollution. So doing something in a new time context is also entirely valid. So yeah, don't feel like you have to do a totally new thing. You don't have to invent the emperor's new groove. Sometimes just circling back and doing the next wave of data collection on the same research site as other folks have done. For example, at long-term ecological research stations, LTERs, on purpose, they're doing the same thing over and over and over for 30 years at a time, 50 years at a time. A few research sites like Hubbard Brook up in the Northeast, they've been collecting different kinds of data there for over a century because they want to do the same thing that somebody else has already done, just in a new time context to establish that trend, you know, time series data. So yeah, don't feel like you gotta come up with something new and completely mind-blowing. It is absolutely enough. We need ongoing monitoring information. We need time series data to answer lots of different kinds of questions, ecological questions, human health questions, stuff like that lend themselves very well to not changing up how we approach stuff, the questions we're asking and so forth. Okay, so I'm trying to be a cheerleader for you. It's all right if you're extending something forward. That's cool. That's a good thing. That's very valuable. Yeah, right on.
I don't have any more questions. I'll just wait till I hear back from my advisor to see what he thinks about adding new variables and how to, which ones that would be best to use. And yeah, so thank you.
Cool. Yeah, right on. And also think about, again, other sorts of sort of passive data, like existing data file analysis, sensor networks that have gone up and gone public, or at least for purchase in the time since this project was started several years ago, for example. We don't always know everything that's happening around our projects as researchers. So it's valuable to have somebody looking for, you know, what effort do I not need to duplicate because somebody else is doing this, and we can just sort of import it as well. So in thinking of new data collection, think also of leaning into what others are going to make very easy for you and very quick as well. Emily, how about you? Other questions?
Not really. Not right now.
Good to go. All right, cool.
Cruising for now.
Awesome. In that case, you know, happy to have helped answer some questions, and I'll be available next for us on Zoom Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. Stop on by then, and if you want to, again, these are all optional while we're asynchronous. Like, you don't need me looking at you while you're working on your proposal or your annotated bibliography or whatever. But yeah, come with questions if you have them. All right. Thank you both for stopping by.
Thank you.
See you around.
You have a good weekend.
All right. You too. Stay safe.